perfect or never making mistakes.
You mean it's not about being some kind of superhuman who can do anything?
Yeah, it's not about that at all. In fact, it's about embracing those inevitable setbacks.
Embracing setbacks, you mean like not letting them get you down?
Yeah, and even more than that, seeing those setbacks as opportunities.
Opportunities for what?
Opportunities for growth.
So it's more about how you bounce back than avoiding failure altogether.
Exactly. The episode even uses some pretty inspiring examples.
Oh yeah, like who?
Like Oprah Winfrey, LeBron James, Malala Yousafzai.
Wow, talk about some high achievers. But they all definitely face their fair share of challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was their mindset, their belief in themselves that helped them overcome those obstacles.
Makes you realize that a strong mindset isn't something you're born with. It's something you build over time.
Like a muscle you train.
Totally. But this episode doesn't shy away from the fact that building that mental muscle can be tough.
Especially for young people today.
Oh, absolutely. This generation is dealing with a whole new set of pressures.
Like what?
I mean, think about it. Social media, the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to succeed.
Oh, yeah. And all the academic stress, too. Not to mention family expectations.
It's a lot. And it can make anyone, especially young people, start to doubt themselves.
Yeah. It feeds that negative self-talk that we all struggle with sometimes. Like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to do that.
It's so easy to get caught up in those negative thought patterns. I know I've been there.
Me too. But here's a key takeaway from the episode. You're not defined by those thoughts.
So you're saying we don't have to believe everything we think.
Exactly. And it's so important to challenge those negative voices.
It's easier said than done, though, right? What does challenging negative thoughts actually look like in practice?
Well, it starts with becoming aware. Just noticing those negative thoughts is the first step.
So paying attention to how you're talking to yourself.
Yes. And once you start to recognize those patterns, you can start to ask yourself, is this thought really true?
Is this thought really true? That's an interesting question to ask yourself.
It is. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'm a failure, ask yourself, what evidence do I have to support that?
So you're putting those negative thoughts on trial, seeing if they actually hold up.
Exactly. And often you'll find that those thoughts are based on fear, not facts.
I can see how that would be really helpful in shifting your perspective. But the episode also talks about setting goals, right? How does that tie into building a strong mindset?
Setting goals is like creating a roadmap for yourself. It helps you shift your focus from comparison to something more positive and productive.
So instead of constantly comparing yourself to others, you're focusing on what you want to achieve.
Yeah. You're creating your own path based on your unique vision and your strengths.
That's powerful. But what about the pressure to set huge, ambitious goals? That can feel overwhelming.
The episode emphasizes that goals don't have to be these massive, life-altering things. They can be small and specific, something you take action on.
So what kind of goals are we talking about here? Give me an example.
Well, let's say your goal is to learn to play the guitar. Instead of saying, I'm going to become a rock star, you might start with something like, I'm going to practice guitar for 30 minutes every day.
That's much more manageable.
Yeah.
Right, and it's something you can actually build on.
Exactly. It's about taking those small, consistent steps that move you in the direction you want to go.
I love that. It takes the pressure off and makes it feel more achievable. But let's be real, even with the best intentions, obstacles come up.
Oh, for sure. Life throws us curveballs. And this episode doesn't shy away from that reality.
So how does it address those inevitable bumps in the road?
It talks about persistence, that ability to keep going even when things get tough.
And that's a huge part of building a strong mindset, right?
Yeah.
Not giving up when you face challenges.
Absolutely. There's a quote from the episode that I love. It's not about never failing. It's about refusing to give up when you do fail.
I've heard that one before, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Thomas Edison and all those attempts it took him to invent the light bulb.
Exactly. He could have given up so many times, but he didn't. And his persistence paid off. But, most people see failure as a negative thing, something to avoid at all costs.
Yeah, it's easy to feel ashamed or embarrassed when we mess up.
Right. But this episode offers a really different perspective on failure.
Oh, I'm curious. What does it say?
It encourages you to see failure as valuable feedback.
Feedback.
Yeah, instead of seeing it as a sign that you're not good enough, you can see it as information.
Information about what?
Information about what works and what doesn't. It can help you adjust your course and find a better approach.
So it's not a dead end, it's more like a detour.
Exactly. And that leads us to the idea of resilience, which is a key part of this whole powerful mindset thing.
Resilience. It's like bouncing back from setbacks, right?
It's more than just bouncing back. It's about developing the mental and emotional strength to navigate all of life's challenges, the big ones and the small ones.
And you need that strength to keep going even when things get tough, right?
Yeah. And this episode ties resilience directly to the idea of a growth mindset, a term coined by Carol Dweck.
I've heard of Carol Dweck. She's a psychologist who studies motivation and achievement, right?
That's her.
Yeah.
And she says a growth mindset is the belief that your abilities can be developed.
So it's not about being born with certain talents. It's about believing that you can learn and grow.
Exactly. It's the opposite of what's called a fixed mindset, where you believe that your abilities are set in stone.
So with a growth mindset, every challenge becomes an opportunity.
Yes, an opportunity to learn and to improve.
It's so important for young people to hear that, especially with all the pressures they're facing.
Absolutely. This episode really acknowledges how tough it can be for this generation to manage all the stress and anxiety that comes with growing up in today's world.
It can feel overwhelming for sure.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have those tools and strategies for building emotional resilience, that ability to cope with those challenges without letting them get the best of you.
And that's something we're going to explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned. We're back and ready to dive even deeper into these strategies for building a powerful mindset.
What I love about this episode is that it's so practical. It's not just about the theory. It actually gives you tools you can use.
Exactly. It's like a toolbox for your mind.
I like that. And some of those tools, like mindfulness, can be especially helpful for young people.
Mindfulness, we touched on that a little bit earlier, but I'd love to hear more about how this episode suggests incorporating it into everyday life.
Well, they start with the basics, like paying attention to your breath.
That seems simple enough, but how does that help with building a strong mindset?
It's about training your mind to focus on the present moment. Instead of getting caught up in worries about the future or dwelling on the past, you're bringing your attention to your breath.
So it's a way to quiet that mental chatter that can be so distracting.
Exactly. And they suggest just starting with a few minutes each day.
That feels doable, even for someone with a busy schedule.
Yeah, it's about finding those little pockets of time. And they also talk about mindful walking.
Mindful walking? What's that?
It's bringing that same awareness to your body as you walk. So instead of rushing from point A to point B, you're really paying attention to each step.
Noticing how your feet feel on the ground.
Yes. And noticing the sights and sounds around you.
It sounds like a way to really ground yourself in the present moment.
It is. And it can be a great way to de-stress. Research even shows that mindfulness can help rewire your brain to be less reactive to stress.
Wow, so it's not just about feeling calmer in the moment, it's actually changing your brain over time.
That's pretty amazing. What else does this episode suggest for building a strong mindset?
They dive deeper into journaling.
Journaling. I used to keep a diary when I was younger, but I haven't really done it as an adult. What's so special about journaling?
It can help you process your emotions and get to know yourself better. They suggest different prompts and exercises you can try.
Like what?
Well, one exercise is to write about a recent challenge you faced.
Okay, and then what?
They suggest exploring how you reacted to that challenge. What thoughts and feelings came up? What did you do? What did you learn?
Interesting. It's like reflecting on your experiences and trying to understand yourself better.
Exactly. And they also suggest using journaling to explore your goals. Your goals? I'm not sure I get that. How can journaling help you with your goals?
Well, they recommend taking some time to write about what you really want to achieve in all areas of your life. Your relationships, your career, your personal growth.
So it's about getting clear on what you want.
Yes. And even more than that, it's about understanding the why behind those goals.
Yeah.
Why are they important to you? What values do they align with?
So you're not just writing down a list of things you want to accomplish, you're really connecting with the deeper meaning behind them.
Right. It can help you clarify your vision and find that motivation that comes from within.
I like that. What other journaling exercises do they suggest?
One that's really popular is writing a gratitude list.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. You just write down things you're grateful for, right?
Yep. They suggest trying to come up with 3 things each day. It could be anything, big or small.
So even something as simple as a sunny day or a good cup of coffee can go on your gratitude list.
Absolutely. It's about shifting your focus to the positive.
And studies show that gratitude can actually make you happier. So it's good for your well-being too.
Exactly. And, in addition to those individual practices, they also talk a lot about the importance of your social connections.
We talked about building a support system earlier, but what else did they say about that?
They emphasize the importance of surrounding yourself with positive people, people who encourage you and believe in you.
Because the people you spend time with can really have a big impact on your mindset.
Totally. They suggest paying attention to how you feel when you're around certain people. Do you feel energized and inspired, or drained and depleted?
That's a good question to ask yourself. It's like taking inventory of your relationships.
Exactly. And they encourage you to be intentional about spending time with people who make you feel good.
And to be that positive influence in other people's lives as well. Because a strong mindset isn't just about individual strength, it's also about community and connection.
So true. And, studies show that strong social connections are one of the biggest predictors of happiness and longevity.
So investing in those relationships is good for your overall well-being.
Absolutely. And this episode also highlights the importance of self-care.
Self-care. It's one of those buzzwords you hear all the time. But what does it actually look like in the context of building a strong mindset?
Well, they talk about prioritizing things that nourish your mind, body, and soul. Things like getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, and moving your body.
It's about taking care of yourself.
Yes. And they encourage you to think about what brings you joy and makes you feel good, and to make time for those things.
So self-care isn't selfish. It's actually essential for building a strong, resilient mindset.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy or complicated. It's about those little things you do each day to take care of yourself.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive, all about building a powerful mindset.
I'm ready to wrap things up. And I have to say, this episode has been packed with useful info. It's given us so much to think about.
I know, right? And it's not just theoretical stuff. It's like, okay, here's what a strong mindset is, and here's how you can actually build one.
Yeah, and I think those practical tips are what make it so relevant.
For everyone, not just young people.
Exactly. I mean, we can all benefit from having a more resilient and empowered mindset, no matter what age we are.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to hear what you think are the biggest takeaways.
The big takeaways. Well, first and foremost, I think this episode really emphasizes that a strong mindset isn't something you just magically acquire. It's something you have to work at.
You have to build it over time.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. Like, it's not a destination, it's a journey.
I like that, a journey. And what are some of the key principles we should keep in mind as we're on this journey?
One of the biggest ones for me is embracing failure.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. Seeing failure as feedback.
Right. It's so easy to get discouraged when you make a mistake, but this episode encourages you to view those setbacks as opportunities.
Opportunities to learn and to grow.
Exactly. And that ties directly into developing a growth mindset, which is another big takeaway. Believing that your abilities aren't fixed, but can be improved with effort and practice.
It's like you're not stuck where you are. You can always learn and grow.
Right. And another thing this episode really emphasized is the importance of managing your emotions.
Yeah. Having those tools to navigate stress and anxiety.
Exactly. And those tools could be anything from mindfulness to journaling to building a supportive network.
Because sometimes you just need to talk things out with someone who gets it.
Exactly. And let's not forget self-compassion. Being kind to yourself, especially when things are tough.
So important. It's like you're your own best cheerleader.
I love that.
Yeah.
And this episode also highlighted the power of connection.
Having those positive relationships in your life.
Yes. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift you and believe in you, it makes such a difference.
It's like having a team in your corner.
And then, of course, there's the whole motivation piece.
Ah, yes. Staying motivated, especially when you're working towards long-term goals.
The episode had some really good tips for that, like celebrating small wins.
Yeah, those small wins can really add up.
And totally. And connecting your goals to a deeper purpose.
Finding that why, that keeps you going.
Exactly. And remembering to stay flexible. Life throws us curveballs. You got to be able to adapt.
It's about being resilient.
Yes. And this episode has given us so many tools and strategies to build that resilience.
It's amazing. So I think a good question for our listeners as we wrap up this deep dive is, what's one small step you can take today to start building a more empowered mindset?
That's a good one. Maybe it's trying out one of those mindfulness exercises we talked about, or writing a gratitude list, or reaching out to a friend who always makes you feel good.
It doesn't have to be a huge change, just a small step in the right direction. And remember, even small actions, when done consistently, can lead to big results.
I love that. Consistency is key.
It is. So thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and inspiration along the way. And remember, building a powerful mindset is an ongoing process, so keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing. We'll